The Bible is a sacred text that has been a cornerstone of spirituality for millions of people around the world. However, in today's world, many people rely on mainstream media to learn about the Bible and its teachings. Unfortunately, this approach is flawed, and one will never learn the true lessons of the Bible from mainstream media. The reasons for this are multifaceted and complex, but they can be broadly categorized into several key areas: bias, sensationalism, lack of depth, and inadequate context. Firstly, mainstream media often approaches the Bible with a preconceived bias. Many media outlets have a secular or liberal worldview that is at odds with the traditional teachings of the Bible. As a result, they often cherry-pick certain passages or stories to fit their narrative, while ignoring or downplaying others that contradict their views. For example, a news article might highlight a Bible verse that appears to condone social justice, while neglecting to mention the surrounding context or other verses that provide a more nuanced understanding of the issue. This selective presentation of the Bible's teachings creates a distorted view of what the Bible actually says and means. Secondly, mainstream media is often driven by sensationalism, which can lead to a superficial understanding of the Bible. News outlets and talk shows often focus on attention-grabbing headlines or controversy surrounding the Bible, rather than delving deeper into its teachings. This approach can create a soundbite culture, where complex biblical concepts are reduced to simplistic or misleading soundbites. For instance, a TV personality might claim that the Bible says an eye for an eye without explaining the historical and cultural context of this phrase, or the ways in which Jesus and other biblical figures reinterpreted this concept in a more nuanced and compassionate light. Thirdly, mainstream media often lacks the depth and expertise to adequately interpret the Bible. While some journalists and commentators may have a basic knowledge of the Bible, few have the extensive training or experience to provide a truly informed understanding of its teachings. As a result, their analysis and commentary can be superficial or inaccurate, failing to account for the complexities of biblical language, history, and culture. For example, a news article might claim that a certain biblical passage is clearly saying something, when in fact the meaning of the passage is disputed among scholars or requires a more nuanced understanding of the original language and context. Lastly, mainstream media often fails to provide adequate context for understanding the Bible. The Bible is a collection of texts that were written in different historical and cultural contexts, and its teachings must be understood within these contexts. However, mainstream media often neglects to provide this context, instead presenting the Bible as a static or timeless text that can be applied directly to modern issues without consideration of its historical and cultural background. For example, a news article might discuss the biblical concept of submission in marriage without explaining the patriarchal social norms of ancient Israel, or the ways in which the Apostle Paul and other biblical writers subverted these norms in their teachings. In conclusion, while mainstream media can provide some basic information about the Bible, it is not a reliable source for learning the true lessons of the Bible. The bias, sensationalism, lack of depth, and inadequate context that characterize mainstream media's approach to the Bible create a distorted or superficial understanding of its teachings. To truly understand the Bible, one must engage with it in a more thoughtful and nuanced way, seeking out knowledgeable and experienced teachers, commentators, and scholars who can provide a deeper and more accurate understanding of its teachings. By doing so, one can gain a richer and more informed understanding of the Bible and apply its lessons in a more thoughtful and compassionate way. Ultimately, this requires a commitment to lifelong learning and spiritual growth, as well as a willingness to engage with the Bible in a way that is respectful, open-minded, and humble.